We have spent a lot of time praying together among the leadership of the church, but also I have spent time with you in conversation, many of you, and spent a good deal of prayer based on those conversations as well, looking for God to give us a clearer sense of direction for our energies to be devoted to as we prepare ourselves to welcome a new pastor and start a new generation of ministries in this community. And I think we stand together at a crossroads, as this church for 176 years has done many, many times. This is not new stuff. But every time is different. And so it's scarier than time before because it's not the same thing. We don't know how to face 2019 because we never had to face it before. And things that go along with our life together as church can't be done the same way they have been done before in order for us to be faithful to the mission we're called to. So it's going to require different things of us, and we're doing it with significantly different resources financially, resources as far as personnel, the people who are involved in making things happen. It's different. But I think God is expecting us to make use of this time at the crossroads to start something different, to put before us a vision of where God's going to be 3 years, 5 years from now, so that we can start moving toward that. That's the calling, not just to know how we can serve ourselves, but how we can take the mission of Christ into the world faithfully from this place. So we want to be on more solid ground so that your next pastor is not an unintentional interim. And so I have asked our elders and the search committee to consider extending my stay with you for at least another year or so until we're able to get at least a clearer sense of what that vision may look like and begin to formulate some directions toward it. I see you, Jerry.
I love you, brother.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to be undertaking some serious conversations that go way beyond this today. But this is a big moment. And I'm going to ask you to put those listening ears on as well as your questions and open your mouth and speak them and not be shy about them so that we have a better understanding of each other as well as what it is we're facing together as a church. We leaders in this congregation, and that's most of the people in this room, we need prayer and we need each other. And all of us together as a body need each other. That has been the compelling strength of this church from its earliest days. So we need to take advantage of that now to live together in mutual accountability and peace and care for each other and pay attention to the mission of God. Listen as our friends speak, and please respond as you wish to. It's not just two that are going to talk to you today, it's bodies of people who have fed into this question and answer conversation. I want you to know that thousands of dollars per year have been carved out of our expenditures over the course of the last 6 months especially. You have no idea. You don't know how many hours have been spent in trying to make things happen, how much staff and how much the leaders of the congregation have put into making life better in this church. There is a limit to how far that can go to make ourselves faithful to the mission and be able to make it ends meet at the end of the year. So pray about that birthday card and what you might be able to put in it. I'm going to ask Stu, if he would, come lead us in a little conversation about budget.
Right. First of all, I would remind everybody that when we have our giving envelopes, there are essentially 3 buckets that we are giving to. We're giving to the general budget, we're giving to outreach, and we're giving to the building. So everything I'm going to say here is just on the first portion, just for the budget. budget. So some of the paperwork that we frequently give out at the council meeting, the numbers I'm going to give you do not include outreach, and they do not include building the related monies. So I would like to say that last year we had a budget of about $220,000. I'm going to give you all round numbers here. The budget of about $220,000. We had income of $212,000. Now, fortunately, we kept our spending down to about $215,000. So that still, last year, gives us about a $3,000 deficit. Now, carrying over into this year, we have projected income of about $150,000. We have expenses still at about $210,000. That's a $60,000 deficit for 2018. Now, earlier in the year, we had a shortfall was approximately, where's my numbers here? We needed approximately $20,000 a month to make our budgets. We were having income of $11,500. So that's $7,500 or $8,000 per month that we were behind. And that was the beginning of the year. Later toward the end of the third quarter, which is today, we are closer to a zero sum, but we're still going to be about $60,000 short from our budget this year. We've done everything we can to reduce spending. Hopefully we'll keep it down to the 215, 210 range. We've had, the trustees have been outside changing out lights from mercury vapor to LEDs. You get just as much light for about 15% of the electricity. There's been a lot of changes with the light switches in all the rooms. As you know, when you walk into a bathroom, it turns on, and when you walk out, after a certain amount of time, it turns off. We've done everything we can with the air conditioning units, as old as they are. We've done what we can with the heating. In fact, there is a new furnace that the trustees did have to put in for the sanctuary, but that's a newer high-efficiency version, so that's saving us some dollars. Everywhere we can possibly save, we've been doing so. There's a new copier that's going to be coming in this week. We've been paying $1,200 a month. Now we're going to be paying $800 a month. So that's $400+ per month that we can save just on that one machine. We're doing everything we can, but we're still going to have a deficit. So, as Pastor David said, we need to pray about this. We need to think seriously about what we can do when it comes time for the stewardship campaign. Now, you've heard a lot of people talk about budget deficit. Those are the numbers. Right now, we're looking at a $60,000 deficit this year. Did I say that we're a zero sum in the later months? I don't know whether that's because we have some people coming back from Florida for the summer, or we've had some people start attending church again. I'm not sure what the case is, but it's a positive trend, but we need to do better. We need to find a way to get through this year and then make sure that next year is not a repeat of the same. All right, so that's my prepared comments. Do you have any questions that you want to talk about?
What about the money that's taken out to pay down that part?
Yes, thank you. I suppose all of you know that Don Nash recently passed. He left a life insurance policy for about $5,000, and so that will be helping out with some of our deficits. We have had some Centel stock for about 15, 16 years, and that's been tied up in the permanent funds. According to the permanent funds policy, we're allowed to take a certain amount of the profit each year and put that towards general fund or wherever it needs to be. So when we surrender that stock sometime this year, and we're trying to find the right people to go through to do that, a number of years worth of proceeds will be put into the general fund. That'll help a little bit too. These are big drops in a large bucket. Is that what you want? Yes, thank you. Anyone else want to? Jerry, I see you smiling. No? Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I don't know how we can continue to pay the people that we have on the payroll. People that aren't, most churches have volunteers. A friend of mine goes to a church, Methodist church in the Grange. The only person they actually pay is the secretary in our ministry. We have secretaries that we're paying. We have youth leadership with hardly any youth in this church. And we have an organist that unfortunately, I don't see how we can continue to pay her. I want to know when we're going to cut those expenses out. And I also want to know, we have a dream, or somebody has a dream, of a massive re-engineering of this church, which we can't afford. We have to understand that we need to repair the roof, we need to do it now, and we need to totally give up on a deluxe rebuild.
Well, if we could
Until all those things happen, it's pretty hard to get behind the church. Now, these expenses they're just too much for us.
Could we hold off with the building discussion for just 5 minutes?
I thought this was up for discussion, everything.
Well, it is as far as budget, but Jeff's got a whole lot more information on the building.
The building is going to be addressed in just a couple minutes, and we'll talk to that piece of it, but the rest of it, the budget.
Well, when are we going to start cutting salaries? That's what I want. We have to get rid of people if we can't afford them.
Do you want to discuss that, or do you want to launch into that?
If we don't do that, then we're going to be in debt, and pretty soon the whole enchilada will go down.
Well, let me say first of all, we're nowhere close to being in debt at this moment.
Luckily, we're not right now.
Right.
That's right. That's the reason we're here.
And we are looking at all staff positions, the work that they do, and how that might be better engineered. There are things that are happening in the work of the church that is beyond the job descriptions of the people that are given. And we're trying to understand better how to make use of the time that we're paying for. And frankly, we're looking at even maybe a different kind of pay structure. When you say we need to take people and get them out of here.
I just want the people not to continue to pay them. I'm not talking
Right, now I understand what you're saying.
But there's a context I meant it.
The reality is we can't afford to not have all the talents employed that we can possibly put to work. So how we're spending to do that is what's under question. But you need to understand, this question began before I got here and never really got traction in the conversations of our leadership until the past 6 months. And we have made tremendous strides, but it's not something you do overnight. If we saw that we were not going to be able to finish the year solvent, if we didn't have money in the bank to finish this year out at a deficit and still survive, then we would have to talk about that immediately. But what we need to do is take a measured response and consider what it is we do need and what it is we don't need. And one thing we don't need to do is to go backwards. So we want to know how we can keep pressing forward, at the same time recognizing that maybe staff is not what it was before. So there's an in-between spot we need to meet that we're trying to meet.
That's part of my spiel I can give her.
Anyone else? Yeah, Karen.
Have you considered in the restructuring of paying by hour? Would that eliminate a lot of,
That has been considered. That has been batted around, yes. Well, then I'm going, okay, yes, go ahead.
There are some old insurance policies in this history room. I don't know if they've been outdated or if they could be cashed in or what, but they're there.
Okay. Well, bring that to my attention after the meeting, would you? I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. I'm sure building is on everybody's mind, as we've already heard. So Jeff's got a whole lot of things he's wanted to tell you about.
just up on the mantle today that just came into play. Where my hand is held down here at the bottom is the north side of State Route 82. So where we're sitting is right here, sanctuary, the old sanctuary. The areas that are in white are the areas we are discussing as far as phase 1 paperwork that is in front of you. And then obviously the remainder, which is on the east side, which is the Sunday school wing, that will be phase 2. So what you have in front of you right now is, again, we're going to be discussing the white portion of the roof line behind me here. Currently, you have money in the building fund of $134,800. You have estimated pledges through the end of 2019 of an additional $40,000. You have memorial money that has been set aside to repair and replace the hood system of approximately $7,000. So you have a total cash availability on hand at the end of 2019, not including any additional funds that come in, of $181,800. The way church extension works is basically they'll give you credit for dollars you have spent towards that project. Meaning the boiler upgrade we did last late spring, the drawings that we have created and some other items. So those credits are listed next, which is your boiler and your drawings, for a total of $16,400. So the loan options you have according to church extension, what they take is the cash on hand as well as your pledges, the credits you have, so that totals $198,200. They take that and they double that, and that will be the maximum loan value that they will give you. So if you double the $198,000, that gives you $396,400. Currently, with the white section that is, on the building behind me, we have just kind of redid an updated version of those expenses from what we presented a few years ago. You're looking at that cost currently with the new pricing of materials today is $430,000, give or take. There's a little bit of room in there, but again, we're not sure where that's at because it hasn't been completely engineered out what we need, so we kind of padded it a little bit. So if you take the $430,000, subtract the $396,000, you're looking at $33,600 difference between the two. That's what the difference will need to be covered if we choose to go forward with this in order to get a loan. Now with that, so if you take that $430,000 loan, the interest rate of approximately 6%, the length of their loans is 15 years. So you're looking at a monthly payment of $3,630 per month on that $430,000 loan. So you take the cash available that we have, which is at $181,800, divided by the monthly payment, so that gives you right at a 4-year expense that you can cover while you're raising additional funds to extend it through the 15-year lifespan. So that being said, that's the number side of it. So there's a lot of things that have gone to get us to at least the numbers that we can present today. The planning committee met again 2 weeks ago to create at least what you have in front of you. And what we've looked at is where we are currently, what needs to be changed and replaced that isn't going to last more than another few weeks, few months, a year or more. And then what is our best options? So the best options that we have in front of us is this scenario. What this does is this creates a roof slope that prevents the water leaks. We're looking at using a steel roof that gives us a 50-year lifespan on that. At the end of that, what you do with it is basically paint it. You don't have to remove it like a existing set of shingles. You don't have to tear it up if it's a flat roof and replace it with another flat roof. So what we're trying to do is look at, if we do something, what is the best route, not only now, but long term. What's 20 years? What's 30 years? What's 50 years? What's the next generation? How can we set things up that's a little better if we can do it? So that's kind of the concept that we're looking at. Some things that have to be done. Number one, there's a boiler the size of this table that's in that room that hasn't been changed out since it was put in. Probably in the 50s would be our guess. Might even be the original boiler that was set up for this original structure. So the efficiency of that obviously is very poor, probably 30% efficient. The new boilers that were put in the spring are 90%, or better. So you're getting quite a bit of savings from the fuel capacity. You have two rooftop units that are placed over this fellowship hall that are no longer, certain parts are no longer available. They don't make them. They're that old. They're failing. They got pieced together for this spring to get us through. So regardless of what happens in the next short time period, those three pieces of mechanical equipment are going to have to be changed out within the next year at the most. They're just not going to last much longer. So regardless of what type of roof you're doing or what we're going to do on the roof, those three have to be taken into consideration. Out of that $430,000 price, you're looking at right at $100,000 in those three units to get them removed, replaced, and back up and running. So no matter what we do to this roof system, you're talking a flat out $100,000 that's going to be spent just to get heating and cooling in this facility. One other thing that we had earlier this spring is the AC units for the sanctuary and hallways in there needed new Freon because they were leaking. Those are the older Freon, which is being phased out by the EPA. So it's basically $100 and some dollars, $150 a pound. So we spent $1,200 this spring on coolant. So as we can upgrade these pieces of equipment here, we're saving ourselves long term. Granted, there's some dollars expended up front. Taking that into consideration, we look at the option, what would it be if we just recoated the flat roof, put new shingles on, and just patched what we have? The difference that you would save is roughly $100,000 the most between the two options. And you're buying yourself a flat roof is maximum 15 years and you're going to redo it. A shingled roof, shingles, you're going to get 20 to 30 years max out of it. So the Planning Commission has brought this option forward to you, and so we're putting it out there. And obviously, you, the congregation, has to decide what you want to do with it, and that's the way things will move forward. So at this point, I will open it up for discussion.
I have one question. The hood system repair, is that the fire suppression?
That's the fire suppression and hood system, yes.
Okay, so some of that 7,000 can be moved down because I think we got it for 45, right? It's being put in soon. I think it was only 4,500.
Okay, well, like I said, I was going off of what I had in the minutes of my notes, so that's...
Oh, okay. So some of that money can be moved down.
Absolutely. Because you got to remember that was, when we touch this roof, that hood system, or the hood system was going to have to be changed out because we're touching it. The hood system is out of date. The Ansel system or the fire suppression system is out of date. The fire department will no longer, check it to make sure that it works right. The insurance company will charge us higher insurance rates if they will cover it.
They won't even cover it.
Okay, so they're not even going to cover it. So that had to be adjusted, hence the hood system updated. When we re-roof this or do anything with it, you're changing where that hood is set on the top if we change the elevations. So regardless, that was going to have to be adjusted and dealt with. Hence the reason I included those numbers, because I knew they were going to be available. Other questions? Yeah?
Looks to me like how many givers do we have at this time? How many people are pledged each week?
That I don't have an
It's less than
accurate
30
number.
at this time, is that correct?
No,
How many? What do you think?
Stu was saying there's probably 60
60 giving units.
giving
60
units.
giving units, okay. So you want us to take a loan that we probably really won't be able to pay to refurbish this church? We have to just repair what is here, do what we can. I think we should take the money that we have and just utilize that money in a cash manner and look for the lowest bidder we can get to give us a quality roof. I know that a flat roof is not a good roof. They're on all the buildings everywhere. I mean, it's just the way things were done. And changing the slope of the drainage, yes, it would be wonderful if we had enough members to pay for that. But the bottom line is, right now, we're still losing members. Now, if that were to turn around, that would be different. But it hasn't turned around that I know of, that I can see. So,
I think that probably $100,000 is going to be required just for the required HVAC changes. That's going to be more than half of what we have on hand. That would leave us next to nothing to do the necessary structural repairs.
$100,000 for the air conditioning.
3 air conditioning units.
You've got 3 units that have to basically be changed out at this particular time in order to keep them functioning.
Didn't that include the boiler too?
That would be removing and upgrading the boiler system. That would be changing out the 2 heating and cooling units on the fellowship hall, correct?
And the ones in the cooling units for the sanctuary are on borrowed time.
Right.
If you don't mind having the sanctuary being at 80 degrees in the summer, you could do it.
I mind.
It has most of the.
Oops.
Yes. Did you have a question?
How much of the roof is actually needs repitched?
The only part that's being repitched is this section right here. This is the current flat roof.
So that's the flat roof
So-
that's up here?
It is actually basically from this post, that direction, there's a strip that runs between this fellowship hall and the sanctuary, and then basically 2/3 of the Sunday school wing is a flat roof. So that's the black is the Sunday school wing that is
Right, but
currently
we're not
flat.
talking about that
We're not
right
talking about, correct.
All right, but right now, this 430,000 for the repitching is for,
30,000.
This is the structural change right here. This would be the structural change. This roof and the other, smaller roofs at the top and bottom, the sanctuary roof, those are just removal and reinstating new weatherproofing. So that would be the steel roof at that time.
And doing the inside repairs.
But yeah, and then of course, all the repairs that would be necessary to beautify the inside after the damage that we do have currently.
So the sanctuary is on year 23 of a 25-year roof.
No,
Until
20.
it's already started.
It's a 20-year roof.
20-year, then it's overdue.
Right.
The shingle out front here is a special case because it's asbestos containing.
Yeah, that is an asbestos shingle, that's correct.
So there is a charge then an extra charge to get rid of those shingles.
That is correct, and that has been accounted for in the price that we have currently.
Could be a lot more.
And the cost of shingles are about $80 a square now, is that right?
They're closer to 100 or more per square,
Well, you
yes.
must not be buying them the right place,
I'm not buying something that is less than
These are
30 years.
lifetime shingles. I priced them out less than 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
You go to Savannah, that's where they'll sell them to you at Neal's. They're actually $81. Standing seam is roughly the heavier gauge. Just the metal itself is about $180 a square. That doesn't include installation.
That is correct.
Installation is about $350 a square. That's what they're going right now. I'm not talking a special cases. That's kind of the standard now. That's a pretty substantial amount of money to spend. Now, I know standing seam is quite popular now, but in the past, nobody has really fell out of popularity for a long period of time. And the shingles they have today are substantially better than the older ones. And the same way with the flat roof materials, substantially better than it was even 20 years ago. Underlayments they have I think that we could expect a reasonable amount of time out of any kind of a flat roof at this time. I know that the way the water runs off is not ideal. It's the way that the church was designed, and it was designed that way due to cost to everybody, you know. That's just how it was. The part we're in here was originally put up after the fire. This part here over here was put up in the early 50s. And then the educational wing, I believe it was 59 or 60 that was started there. There used to be a vestibule there, and then they've added on to that again. I don't really know what time that was added on to, but all of these roofs are, well, like most churches, it's just a series of add-ons. It wasn't planned as a unit. Now you're trying to make it into a unit, and that's probably not cost effective. Well, it was waterproof when they built it, and it can be re-waterproofed the same way. And I can't support any roof re-engineering at this time. Now, if we had the membership, that would be the way to go. You've got a bunch of figures here, and I really don't see how you're talking about how big of a loan we can. The reason we're able to operate now is because we don't owe money. Now, you want to put us in debt, so we do. You know?
Any of us want to put ourselves in debt, but it's a matter of, can we keep this church going? I'm in the education wing. I'm the one that has to work around the leaks and things like that in there. Pastor Chapin is preaching underneath one of those leaks. We're at the point where we need to do a permanent solution, or we're just going to keep throwing money into Band-Aids. A metal roof is, in the long run, more cost effective. So that's why I'm 100% behind it, because it's the safety of our children in the education wing, when we can get to that phase, is important. Getting rid of the mold and the leaky roofs and the soggy carpets and the ruined classroom materials is what I see when I come in every Sunday.
Is it all included in this?
This, we can't. We have tried going for the big picture to make it most streamlined, best runoff to the water, for, again, for our future, for our children and our children's children and things like that. But we don't have the money. We've tried and we don't. So we have to figure out where can we best serve the needs of this congregation immediately. And Glenn and the other trustees have said that just doing this side of the roof right now will eliminate 90% of our leaks. So we will have to continue to be able to Band-Aid the education wing until we can get 90% of the leaks fixed, this side paid off, and then we can move forward with that.
When was any of the roof work done? When was the last time it was been worked on?
Well, the sanctuary, vast majority of your shingles were put on when the sanctuary was done. That was 96.
So then what kind of Band-Aids have been done is what I'm asking.
Right now, it's just been, as the shingles have been blown off, they've been repaired, and that's where they sit. The flat roof was done. The last repair was done just prior to Pastor Chuck coming here, so that's been probably 5 or 6 years. Prior to that, probably about 8 or 10 years prior to that was the last major repair. And West Roofing has basically said these roofs are out of warranty, and they've been out of warranty for years. So we've been paying a maintenance fee for them to come out and patch and repair every year. Was it probably between $1,000 and $1,500 plus any additional large repairs that they do each and every year. Depending on the year, some of them have been more. Some years we've been lucky that we've kept it, at that roughly $1,000 a year for the flat roof repairs. But the flat roofs, to answer one of your questions, most of the flat roof companies are basically saying 10 years and you're done with the flat roof. So that gives you an idea of lifespan for a repair and replacing of a flat roof. Is this something we're willing, we want to jump out and do? Financially, no. Physical necessity, it's coming to a point we got to do something with it. Pat, you had, I'm sorry, Stu was up first and then you.
I just want to say that in the history of this congregation, we were very fortunate to have a new sanctuary basically paid before we built it. But that's not in the history of this congregation. There have been a number of loans taken out for various expansions. I was going through some of the materials in the safe just this week, and I found 4 different canceled loan documents that go all the way back to 65. So we've had expansions, we've taken loans before, we've taken them out of local banks like Elyria Savings instead of going with the church foundation, or the Board of Extension rather. So, I mean, this is not new for this congregation, it's just it hasn't been done for a while.
What addition did they put on in 65?
I
I'd
believe
like
that's
to
the
think that.
education one you're talking about.
Put on in 60.
Well, yeah.
Pat,
Finished
you had a
in
question?
60. Norm Kramer was the ramrod. Well, you can look at whatever paperwork you want. I was here. I remember when Norm didn't get it.
Yes, ma'am.
There were other, there is an addition that was put
Hello,
on.
Mary. So I was just thinking, if I was, and my house needs a new roof, and it's going to be more cost effective and not a Band-Aid to put on new shingle roof rather than the metal. Yeah, it would be nice, but like I personally can't afford to do that to my home, and I see that here. But even just putting on, fixing it with a new shingle roof is not a Band-Aid. That is fixing the problem and waterproofing it. It's just a choice of materials and the cost of those materials. So I don't think we need to misconstrue it as a Band-Aid because it's cheaper to put on the asphalt roofing and rather than the metal roofing.
The problem that we're running into, as he pointed out, we've had so many additions on, that even with the current systems that are on there, the flashings and the joint where the flat roof and the shingle roofs are coming together, I don't know if the new folks that are going to do it can do it any better, but we've had leaks since day one, and so hence the reason why we're looking at trying to rechange at least some of the flat roofs for a better pitch to alleviate
I'm not
those
talking
issues.
about the pitch, I'm just talking about the materials.
I'm aware of that, but you've got to talk both when you're looking at it. Because if we just put new materials on and we don't solve the problem where all the roofs come together, you're still going to create a water leak that comes in, and now you've spent all the funds to change it, and if you still have a water leak, what good has that gotten you, except to just have a nice
No,
look
but we would
over
still
it?
need to change the pitch basically on this section. The rest of it's pretty much okay.
Yeah, we're not talking about changing the pitches on any of them that are
No,
sloped currently. It's just the flat roof that we're talking about, changing the
Exactly,
pitch.
and so I'm thinking right,
Yes.
but then doing it with shingles is cheaper than putting metal.
You will gain, again, like I said, the cost difference was not quite $100,000 difference
Yeah.
between the two. But again, at that point, you're buying a 30-year scenario at best. So again, it's up to the congregation what they want to do. I'm just putting information out there.
In 30 years, that roof's going to be sitting right where we are. So, I mean, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
I understand and I agree. I'm not swaying people either direction. I'm
Okay,
giving you
just
data.
say,
Yep. Other questions, other thoughts?
Maybe the flashing material that they used was just galvanized, you know.
That's
They're
true.
still selling copper, you know. I've never seen any, but they couldn't be bent. If you can't find people to bend it, you know, let's not go over the right place.
A question.
Yes.
If we go with a shingle roof, and 30 years from now we have to replace the shingles, what is the cost of having that done versus if we have a metal roof that lasts 50 years? What is the cost of repainting the metal roof in 50 years?
Well, you're asking me something I don't have. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball.
In today's dollars.
Today's market, if you were to reshingle this roof, you know, in today's market, you're probably looking at close to $200,000 to reshingle this entire structure. And again, those are just best guesses because I don't have my numbers in front of me.
How many squares are up there?
Again, I don't have that number.
You don't know that?
Not memorized, no. That's why
I'm
I've
just
got
talking a round number, I mean, is it 300 squares, 100 squares?
If you're looking at the difference between shingling and painting, your painting project would probably be, I'm going to make an educated guess at probably 50,000, maybe 75 if you were to repaint a metal roof at that point.
So you're saying that a metal roof will cost more now, but down the road, again, according to how things are pretty much progressing today, it would cost 3/4 less 20 years later for the maintenance.
Current market, yes.
And that's not enough. Of course, we understand that. It's just like today is today and not 20 or 30 years from now.
Yep.
We've got to deal with what we can afford to do today.
Yep.
Even though I grant you that would be better way to go, but
Jeff, I just have a question.
Yes.
So with that metal roof, does it have to be maintained or repainted every 10 years, or
No,
what is
50.
the time frame? Every 50?
The first repaint's going to be somewhere between 40 years and after.
we're going to be gone.
But our kids, our children, hopefully our children's children.
Yes,
Why are these drawings so costly?
because when you get into commercial drawings, everything has to be put on the drawing, from not necessarily the nails, but every piece and everything that you do has to be engineered and done. And so what takes a house drawing takes, say, 2 or 3 days to draw up. You're talking a commercial job, especially this size, you're talking probably 2 to 2.5 weeks of effort from one or more people. Same with all of your heating and cooling systems. Every ductwork has to be laid out in size. So, on some commercial jobs, I know, the drawings have been, $20,000 and $30,000 to get them drawn. Obviously, we're not that large, but, that's where they can go at some point.
This is what we have already paid. This isn't future, this is.
Yeah, these drawings, if we continue down this road, these drawings would just be, finished modifying to get them into a state ready to submit for permits. So you're probably talking another between 8 and 10 hours of one drawing, and then you go into the mechanical side, and they'll have to do all the engineering on those. So you're probably going to have another 5,000 in drawing fees, maybe 8 to top it off, depending on how far they are in the design at this point, and what it's going to take to finish it.
Yeah. Do they figure repairs or any remediations in those estimates?
Church extension, basically, to answer that specifically as far as repairs, when we do major repairs, yes. When we do minor,
I
replacing
know
a few
that
here
would
and
be
there,
part of
probably
the
not.
cost that we would have to pay. Or is that going to be something they get into and say, oh, we didn't foresee this, so it's an add-on?
You're talking if we are opening a piece of roof and find some additional damage.
Yes.
Well, that's what, during the design phase, they try to, so to speak, peel back the onion a little bit without doing any damage and keeping it weather tight and see what kind of damage is there and try to make sure that that is calculated for. But you're always going to find a little something. Yeah. So when I price stuff, and it's what I did with this one, is I try to put a little percentage in there to cover some of the hoops that you might find. Yes, good.
We've been talking about doing this project for 2 years. We've been waiting to try and see if we can get pledges up to a point where we could do it alone for the whole thing. I want to say, if I had a car that I needed to replace 4 tires on, I would have a choice of doing all 4 tires, but maybe I'd have to buy the really cheap tires, and then I'd have to replace them in 2 years. Or I could do half the job to get new tires on the front, and then I'd have to worry about 2 tires in the back maybe next year. But the 4 tires are not going to get me through winter. I think after 2 years, we have to do something. I think the congregation's been asking for it. I think it's time we started something, and I would love to see the whole thing done at once, but I don't think we can do the whole thing at once. We're going to have to take care of the part that's leaking. We're going to have to make this watertight, however we do it, and we've been in discussions. That's why we asked you guys to be here today.
Someone right here had a hand. Mickey?
I just want a clarification, I guess, for us to understand this sheet. So we do have $181,800 cash on hand. We have that towards the building.
That would be at the additional pledges at the end of 2019. So currently you have 134.8 or something like that in cash.
It's fantasy.
So
Okay, so and then, so with that money and credits, we have that money, we can get the total amount of the loan possible at today's given is $396,000.
that is correct.
And so then we can get that loan, and we have to raise $33,600 to get the loan that covers the whole.
That is correct.
The white part.
Yes.
And so if we can raise $33,600, then we have 4 years of monthly payment covered
That is
already.
correct. That is correct. That's at 181,000 that is at the top. That would cover the loan amount for the first 4 years while you're raising additional capital between now and then. Obviously, whatever you raise between now and then, when those dollars run out, you would have to continue that would allow you to continue loan payments.
Okay.
Yes?
Question for you on your math. We start with 198.2. We multiply that by 2, we get 396.4 as our available amount. The difference between that and the estimated 430 is 33.6, but if we came up with another 15.3, would that still be doubled like the math above?
Yes. If
So what
we have...
is 15.3, not, well, okay, 15-ish.
Right.
To get that double to become the 33, so if it's 16 and a half, whatever that is, and we've got roughly 60 families giving, we're looking at another 280, 290 in the next year, which is what, $5, $6 a week from every family? Is that what we're really asking for?
If that's what the math works backwards.
I'm just doing this, trying to pull it out of my head. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, math in your head, yeah, I haven't done that yet.
A lot of this really depends on faith. Do we have the money right now? No, we don't. If you give 10% to the Lord, why is it that 90% goes farther than the 100%? Because the Lord blesses you. If we have the faith that this church will continue to grow, if we keep having leaks, the people come in, I don't want to go here. We get it fixed and so it looks nice. This will make the payments for 4 years. There's housing going up in this neighborhood. If we have the faith that God is going to direct us, He will supply these funds. If we don't have the faith, those doors are going to be locked.
Now, I need to add one piece, and I'm actually stealing, I think, part of what you said earlier from the first one. There are some families in the church currently that are not giving to the roof campaign until they decide, we're ready to move forward and do something. Some, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you or Stu, I forget who said it, have decided to fund the roof or put money into the roof, but not general fund.
That's right.
So we've got families on both sides that are, some will give to general but not roof, some will give to roof but not general. So we've got a mix of a little bit of everything going on. So if we can get, and that's why it's taken us so long to get to this point. We wanted to make sure that we presented accurate information out to you versus saying, okay, we can do this, but a week later we find something different and we can have to update that. Over the last 2 years since we first started this, obviously there's been a lot of changes. The elders and all the other leadership have been working, dealing with other things, trying to get all of this brought to the table in an understandable effort for everyone. The elders especially, we've been dealing with staff, we've been dealing with ministerial, and we've building, and we've slacked off on the spiritual side. We're now bringing all of this to the table and saying, okay, we've got it as best and far as we can take it. The congregation now has to decide what they want to do so that we can now start looking back and working with the minister to work on our spiritual side here at this congregation. So that's where we are standing currently, and so we're now putting it out there to you to have conversations over the next period of time. Obviously, it's going to take a while to have a little conversation. One of the questions that was asked at the first session was, if we say, yes, let's move, or we get the dollars and we can move forward, how quick could we start something? By the time you do church extension, as far as a loan, it will take can take up to 2 months. Okay, sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's not. All depends on everything that's involved. So you've got to get drawings created, so the drawings that are started on this have to be finished. They can go to the church extension, then they can get sent to the permits. Once the permits are given, now you get some materials on order. So your physical construction probably is between anywhere from 3 to 6 months to start a physical construction once you say, if you decide to say, move forward.
Are we going to vote on that eventually?
That will be put out to the congregation, and at some point, yes, the congregation will have to give an affirmation and a vote on what they want to do. That way it's not, this group is saying move forward. It's going to be the congregation that says, yes, let's move forward, or yes, let's do this piece of it. And that's the way it's going to be put.
We need more fundraisers.
Certain leadership can only be stretched so far. So that's where the rest of them in the pews need to step up and do their part for whatever piece of your spiritual journey you want to do. Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering why we're not getting an estimate on replacing the standard roof we have today. See where we're at. There would be no charge for an estimate cost. We could get a half a dozen estimates, and if why haven't we done that? You obviously don't even know how many squares are on the roof. I mean, how could anybody not know that it's looked at the roof? That's what I'm assuming you're the one that's been up on the roof. Am I correct?
I have been on this roof.
And you should have a rough idea how big the job is. Why can't we get some estimates from contractors, post a public notice, and see what kind of a price we can get to replace this with standard materials, and it's not a patch job, but a re-roofing job, to see whether that would be more affordable. It would cost us nothing.
You want to allow me to answer now? When we started this, we did. That's why I was able to give you the approximate $100,000 difference between the two if you were to replace what you have on a flat roof and shingles roof versus a metal roof. We got those estimates when we first started this. Have we done it today? No, we have not, because it's not worth it until the congregation decides which way they want to go.
How can they decide if they don't know what the difference is? How can people here decide? How long would it take to get a few estimates? A few weeks?
It could take you up to 2 months if you include the flat roofs.
You'd have to include it all. It all needs it, right?
We can get those numbers and put them on the table to you if you want accurates. Everything is...
I don't see how we can do it any other way if we expect... Would you expect people to be behind you? I'm not behind you. That's not pretty obvious. I mean, you guys don't even seem to be able to find a low-cost shingle provider, I was told that it's certainty shingles and they were guaranteed for life, We can get a Mennonite crew in here. There's nobody that does better work and it'd be more cost-effective.
But guaranteed for life is the life of the shingle, which could be...
Well, it didn't mean anything. I laughed when he told me that. And it'll be the same way with the metal roof. It can be guaranteed for life, but You know, you can get acid in the steel, it can rust through from the inside. The metal roofs they're putting on today that are standing seam, they're not like an old barn roof. That has so much galvanized on it, it lasted for 100 years. These roofs won't last like that. They're not
Warren,
steels.
Stu asked you a question.
I was just asking if you'd be willing to help us with doing that.
I could go to a Mennonite source I may know and ask for an estimate, or ask him who to get an estimate from.
Okay, good. We'll call on you.
Because we haven't gone out and got actual hard numbers today, simply for the fact is until the congregation has decided whether they want to move forward with something, it's not worth it to me to have a person and a company put an estimate out that they did 2 years ago. Hear me out now. That we did 2 years ago. The numbers haven't changed in an extreme amount. I can calculate for materials. And once we are decided, the congregation speaks, we'll move forward with whichever option that they want to do. And that's the way I'm going to do it. Yes?
I'm still confused as to what this price versus the estimate that you got before. Was that on repitching the roof and doing with shingles? Or was that just on reshingling?
Okay. The price that I'm comparing is apples to apples. So number one was what would it cost to just leave the flat roofs where they're at, not change the pitch, and reshingle. So you're just taking what's existing and putting a new layer or a new flat roof or new shingles on it. So that's the difference between $100,000 difference.
Okay.
That is the cost difference basically for the additional framing that has got to take place to slope this roof. There's your cost difference. So if you were to replace what's existing, the only thing you're saving is really the middle section that we're changing the slopes on. That's it. Because regardless of what you're doing, you're shingling or flat roofing that area. So you're spending dollars for the cost to weather tight every inch of that roof. So what the difference is actually the material that it costs to change the pitch. And that's what you're saving. So there's your $100,000 approximate difference between just reshingling the facility, putting a new flat roof on these same areas versus changing the pitch and then of course putting steel roof on it.
Can you use a steel roof on a flat?
No, you cannot. It has to have a slope to it, yes.
What's the minimum slope on one of those?
For steel or shingles?
For steel.
For steel, they'll allow a 212.
It's pretty flat.
Yeah. But you have to do, you basically are putting like an ice guard or a membrane under other than felt that's a little more durable, and then there's an additional sealer tape that goes with the metal to help resist water leaks when you get those heavy torrential rains on that low of a slope. Actually, it's
Snow patch is a bigger problem.
yeah, I was going to say the snow. I'm sorry, the snow is the correct time frame.
Snow load?
The snow it's the snow when it backs up, when the freeze thaw that you get. That's where the water issue can come into play on a lower sloped steel roof.
If we redo it and keep the flat roof, we're going to have less cost now, but in 10 or 15 years at the moment, you're going to have to redo that flat roof all over again.
Right.
So you're
That's another hand.
having that in the long run.
Right.
Long run, if you can get away from flat roofs, any roofer will tell you you're better off.
A flat roof is a late thing to happen.
Other thoughts before I turn it back over to the pastor for the last piece? So obviously, this is conversation that we all need to continue. As we hear and need information, we'll put it out there. But now it's out to the congregation, and that's where it'll stay for a while. Yes?
So roughly, for the 100,000, we're getting the pitch, a steel roof, which gives us 50 years.
Correct. Like I said, like I said, the only difference between the two expenses is the framing to get a different slope to the roof. Because no matter what you're doing, you're still needing to put down either A, a rubberized or a flat roof, and B, you need to put shingles on. So those costs are going to be there regardless of what we do.
So that's $10,000 a year, roughly, to give us 50 years.
Yeah. Because that's what the planning committee was looking at, is what is the duration versus replacement, and where is the cycles that the replacements need to happen, what are those expenses, what gives us the longest durability for the longest period of time that is as economical as we can get.
And we have no idea what shingles are going to cost in 50 years.
Well, we don't have any clue what anything's going to cost in 50
Right.
years. You're correct.
We know it will be higher.
Yes. Okay, I will wrap up my section and ask you can finish it up.
I said earlier, most of you have no idea the amount of work that is done by people who aren't on the payroll here. I want to respectfully submit to you that for all the noise and complaints and haranguing and harassment and ill-willed bad treatment by many people, you ought to be ashamed. Put them on the payroll. I don't carry a lot of things around in my head and hip pocket. I learned a long time ago I got the retention of a flea. So if I can't write it down and stick it somewhere or put it in my phone, I'm lost. But I'm trying to remember a couple things I wanted you to take with you. One is a prayer for how we will deal with our budget deficit this year and be faithful to keeping the ministries alive that we have. I want you to pray about also, when you go home, the question of the roof. And the reason, I don't know if I made this clear enough yet, so I'm going to just do it probably every time you hear me. Before I leave here, my goal is to go at least a week without hearing the word roof spoken one time.
Amen.
Because we've done just about everything we can do here except the mission of Jesus. Because we're wrangling over a roof. Now, you called together a planning committee and authorized it by the powers that be in this church before I got here. If you want to change that committee, you need to speak up. And you need to take that to the council. Now, I don't know what they can do about it. But you need to raise up that question at that moment. Here's the issue. Whatever your planning committee does after we've had the conversations that have started here today needs to reflect two things. One, the will of the congregation, and two, the memory of what we did 2 years ago to put this campaign in front of you to begin with, because we are lying to donors by cutting this project in half. And we have a fiduciary responsibility for every cent given to that capital campaign to spend it the way we ask for it. And we're fudging in order to get it started so that we don't lose a building. So whatever plan we come up with, change the pitch, don't change the pitch, shingles, metal, those decisions need to be put into one package, because what we are not is a democracy. The Church of Jesus Christ has never been a democracy. So we will have a plan to vote on as a congregation after these conversations take place. We're starting that conversation here for a reason. Because we've had too many other conversations under the current. Sniping and backbiting and ugliness. And I thought I brought something up about that in that room over there. Have salt among yourselves. Be at peace. But keep it on top of the table, not underneath it, okay? Bring your questions to me. I'm always happy here.
doesn't want plaster falling on his head?
Well, if I get a whole lot more of the plaster on the pulpit, I may rescind the offer to stick around another year. I don't know. But seriously, I want you to pray about these things hard. This is not small potatoes, and this just isn't a question of taste. It also calls into question God's abundance versus God's frugality. I saw nothing in any of Scripture that talks about frugal God. Now, I've seen frugal people. It's wonderful. Disciples of Christ are typically Scotch-Irish kind of people. God's not. Every word calls out the abundance of God's creation, the abundance of God's provision for His people. You got to stand up against that. If you want to make an argument against that with me, that's fine. But God didn't call us to a small mission. It's a big one. It goes to the whole world. Okay? Bless you as you go home. Pray about this, please. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for staying. I hate to hear that, but thank you. Yeah, I'll bring the jar back.
Field projects in there and things like that.
Oh, I told her she got there. She went home. She got there. You didn't blame her for that. You know
Hey, there's a whole tray of egg bake. Anybody wants it? It just came out of the oven, so.
Anything after that can be done.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. Yep, absolutely.
It can be fun. I know. There's time
I don't understand all what's going on. I'm just
or have a try. That's true. One overnight stay.
You want to see those?
Sure.